The Wanda Beach Murders. The two girls who never came home. Imagine being 15 years old. It is a warm January afternoon in Sydney, Australia. The beach is crowded, the ocean is calm, and the day feels completely ordinary. Two teenage girls arrive at Wanda Beach with younger children from the neighborhood. They have no idea that before the sun rises again, they will be dead. And they have no idea that their murders will become one of Australia's most infamous unsolved mysteries. Their names were Marianne Schmidt and Sharrock. Both were just 15 years old. More than 60 years later, nobody has ever been convicted of killing them. And what makes the case even more disturbing is that investigators may have come dangerously close to identifying the person responsible. This is the story of the Wanda Beach Murders. January 11th, 1965. On January 11th, 1965, Marianne Schmidt and Sharrock traveled to Wanda Beach in Cronulla in Sydney South. The two girls were best friends and neighbors from West Ryde. They were teenagers enjoying what should have been an ordinary summer day. Marianne was accompanied by four younger siblings. At some point after lunch, Marianne and Christine told the children they were going to collect their belongings from another part of the beach. Then they walked away. The younger children waited, but the girls didn't come back. At first, there was nothing to suggest that anything terrible had happened. Perhaps they had simply been delayed. Perhaps they had met someone they knew. Perhaps they had decided to go somewhere else. But as the hours passed, the situation became more frightening. The two girls were missing, and somewhere nearby, something terrible had already happened. The discovery. The following day, January 12th, the beach became the center of a horrifying discovery. The bodies of Marianne Schmidt and Sharrock were found in the sand dunes near Wanda Beach. They had been brutally murdered and partially concealed in the sand. The discovery immediately transformed a quiet Sydney beach into a crime scene. Police arrived, investigators began searching the surrounding area, and the question that would dominate the investigation was brutally simple. Who killed two 15-year-old girls in a place where other people had been nearby? The answer would prove extraordinarily difficult to find. The National Film and Sound Archive of Australia preserves footage from the original investigation, including interviews with Detective Inspector Haynes, who was placed in charge of the case. The archival record describes the investigation as widespread, involving thousands of witnesses and suspects. But despite the enormous effort, nobody was charged. A massive investigation. The police investigation grew rapidly. Detectives needed to reconstruct the girls' final hours. Who had seen them? Who had spoken to them? Who had been near the beach? And most importantly, who might have had an opportunity to attack them without being noticed? Police appealed to the public. Witnesses came forward. Suspects were questioned. Descriptions were gathered. Investigators attempted to piece together the movements of two girls whose final moments were hidden behind conflicting memories and incomplete evidence. Within 18 months, police had interviewed approximately 7,000 people, according to the National Film and Sound Archive. At the time, it was described as the largest investigation in Australian history, but the number of interviews did not produce the answer investigators needed. Instead, the case became a maze. Thousands of people, hundreds of possibilities, and one killer who remained unidentified. The man in the shadows. As investigators reconstructed what happened, descriptions and theories surrounding a possible attacker began to emerge. One of the most enduring aspects of the case was the possibility that the girls had encountered a stranger near the beach. But identifying someone decades ago was very different from identifying someone today. There were no smartphones, no CCTV network covering the streets, no databases capable of instantly comparing fingerprints or DNA. And witnesses could only provide what they remembered seeing: a face, a vehicle, a voice, a person standing somewhere near the beach. Small details that might have seemed insignificant at the time could become crucial after a murder. But memories fade, people move, evidence disappears, and years turn into decades. The case that wouldn't die. The Wanda Beach Murders did not disappear from public memory. They became one of Australia's most notorious unsolved murder cases of the 1960s. Years after the killings, investigators continued to examine possible suspects and theories. In 1981, television footage revisiting the investigation reported that police had interviewed more than 16,000 people, including roughly 5,000 suspects. And still, there was no definitive answer. No arrest, no conviction, no courtroom where the evidence could finally be tested. Just two teenage girls whose lives ended on a summer beach, and a mystery that refused to disappear. The suspects. Over the years, several individuals became the focus of theories surrounding the murders. But this is where the story becomes especially important to understand. A person being investigated is not the same thing as a person being proven guilty, and a theory is not evidence. One name that has repeatedly appeared in discussions about Wanda Beach is Christopher Bernard Wilder, an Australian-born American serial killer later known as the Beauty Queen Killer. Wilder was identified as a possible suspect decades after the murders, but the connection remains disputed, and he was never charged with killing Marianne Schmidt or Christine Sharrock. The National Film and Sound Archive notes that Wilder was identified as a suspect as recently as 2018, while emphasizing that the Wanda Beach murders remain unsolved. There have also been other theories involving convicted criminals and possible connections to the murders, but none has produced the one thing this case has always needed: proof. And that distinction matters, because when a murder remains unsolved for decades, speculation can easily become mistaken for fact. The evidence. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Wanda Beach case is the possibility that evidence existed, but that time may have made it increasingly difficult to use. In 1965, forensic science was nowhere near where it is today. DNA profiling did not exist as a practical criminal investigation tool. Investigators had to work with the technology available to them. And even when biological evidence was preserved, decades of storage, handling, changing investigative practices, and lost records could potentially make modern analysis difficult. This is one reason cold cases can become so frustrating. The truth may have existed inside the evidence all along, but investigators may not have had the technology to extract it. And by the time that technology arrived, the evidence might no longer have been available in the same condition. Or 60 years of questions. Imagine being one of the investigators in 1965. You know two young girls were murdered. You know where their bodies were found. You have witnesses. You have suspects. You have thousands of people willing to talk. And yet, after all those interviews, the killer remains somewhere outside the reach of the law. Then the years begin to pass. 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50. The people who remembered the original investigation grow older. Some die, some forget. Others take their secrets to the grave. And the girls remain 15 forever. Marianne Schmidt, Christine Sharrock. Two names frozen in time. A mystery that still haunts Australia. The Wanda Beach murders are more than an old crime story. They are a reminder of how quickly an ordinary day can become a nightmare. Two teenagers went to the beach. They expected to return home. They didn't. And despite one of the largest investigations Australia had seen at the time, the person responsible was never brought to justice. The National Film and Sound Archive still preserves the original television coverage of the investigation. In those old images, detectives can be seen searching the beach where the girls' bodies were found. The footage is more than 60 years old now, but the question it represents has never aged. Who killed Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sharrock? The final question. There are countless theories. There are people who have been suspected. There are alleged connections to other criminals. There are witnesses whose stories have been questioned. There is evidence that has been lost, disputed, or rendered difficult to interpret by the passage of time. But there is still no conviction, no definitive killer, and no final chapter. The Wanda Beach murders remain unsolved, and perhaps the most disturbing thought is not simply that someone committed this crime and escaped justice. It is that somewhere, the answer may have existed all along. Maybe someone saw something and didn't understand its importance. Maybe someone remembered a face but couldn't identify it. Maybe a piece of evidence that could have solved the case disappeared decades ago. Or maybe the person responsible lived an ordinary life afterward, carrying the secret of what happened at Wanda Beach into the future. We may never know, but Marianne and Christine deserve to be remembered not only as victims of an unsolved murder. They were 15-year-old girls. They had families. They had friends. They had futures. And on January 11th, 1965, They went to the beach expecting nothing more than an ordinary day. Instead, their names became permanently connected to one of Australia's darkest mysteries. More than 6 decades later, the question remains, who murdered the girls at Wanda Beach? Until that question is answered, the case remains open, and the beach remembers. This is Mystery Vault.